You should be grateful. I haven't traded you in completely, he sneered, right after confessing to his affair with a coworker young enough to be our daughter. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, 45, invisible, humiliated in my own kitchen, while he poured wine like nothing happened. Then he called me unstable to his colleagues and handed her the promotion I helped him earn. But I still packed his lunch, still smiled, still watched him lather up in the shower with that shampoo he loves, never noticing it wasn't his. Now the office calls him a clown. He has no idea what's coming next. My name is Renee Carter, and I'm 45 years old. Every morning, I maintain our household, while my husband Marcus, the office manager everyone adores at Brighton & Associates, prepares for another day of dazzling clients. The steady hum of our sub-zero fridge masks the silence between us as I pack his lunch, a ritual that feels heavier lately. My husband's phone stays face down now, his compliments have a bitter edge, and his late meetings stretch past dinner. But I have my mother's leather notebook, filled with 20 years of careful observations, receipts tucked between its pages like pressed flowers. Each morning, I document the small betrayals while Marcus rushes out, never noticing how I catalog every receipt, every text, every inconsistency. But let me start from the beginning. Monday mornings always started with laundry, a habit as regular as Marcus's coffee order. The washer hummed its familiar song while I sorted through pockets, checking for forgotten receipts or loose change. That's when I found it, crumpled in his gray suit jacket. A boutique receipt that made my fingers go cold. You know that moment when your world shifts? When everything you've pushed down, every doubt you've dismissed, suddenly crystallizes? The paper trembled in my hands, champagne, roses, and a diamond pendant I'd never seen. My chest tightened as I checked the timestamp. 8:43 p.m. last Thursday, the night Marcus texted he was stuck at the office reviewing contracts. I pulled up our joint banking app, something I'd been doing more often lately. There it was, 847.32 at Carlisle Jewelers. My thumb hovered over the screenshot button as memories flooded back. Mother teaching me to keep records, her voice steady. Documentation is your shield, baby. The truth doesn't hide. The coffee maker gurgled in the kitchen, marking time like a metronome. 7:15 a.m. Marcus would be down soon, straightening his tie, ready for another performance as Brighton & Associates' golden boy. I tucked the receipt into my notebook, mind already mapping out the evening ahead. Marcus had a talent for turning conversations sideways when cornered, throwing out accusations until you forgot your original question. Not this time. I spent the day moving through my routine like a ghost, mind spinning possible scenarios. The bank record got screenshot, saved, and printed. I positioned the receipt next to today's newspaper, capturing both in one photo, date and evidence clear as day. Everything went into Mother's leather notebook, each page a brick in the wall of truth I was building. Have you ever watched a pot of pasta boil while your life hangs by a thread? At 7:03 p.m., I plated the linguine, his favorite. The sauce was perfect, the table set just so. My hands didn't shake. Wouldn't that surprise him? At 7:11 p.m., keys jingled at the front door. I counted my breaths, the way my therapist taught me years ago. One question. That's all I needed. No room for lies. No space for his usual dance of deflection. The door handle turned with a sound that seemed to echo through our too-quiet house. The lock clicked shut behind him, and I took that first step toward whatever came next. This was no time for maybes or what-ifs. The receipt burned in my pocket like a lit match, and I had one chance to strike before Marcus could spin his web of excuses. 20 years of marriage had taught me timing was everything, and, right now, time was finally on my side. I listened to his footsteps in the hallway, the familiar pattern of shoes being removed, briefcase set down. Each sound marked another moment closer to truth. My fingers traced the edge of Mother's notebook, drawing strength from its worn leather cover. The table between us would be both battlefield and witness. Let me tell you something about confrontation. It's not about who shouts loudest or who has the cleverer comeback. It's about standing your ground when the earth starts to shake. As Marcus's steps drew closer, I straightened my spine and took one final breath. The truth was about to have its moment, whether he was ready or not. The kitchen door swung open. Marcus stepped through, his smile already forming, the same smile that had covered so many lies. But this time, I saw it clearly for what it was. A mask about to crack. The lock's echo still hung in the air as I stood, receipt in hand, ready to shatter 2 decades of pretense with a single question. I laid the receipt on the dining table, smooth and flat between us. The paper seemed to glow under our kitchen lights, each printed number stark against the white. Marcus stood there, still in his suit jacket, tie slightly loosened, looking exactly like the man I thought I'd married. Except now, everything was different. What's this? About honey? He reached for his usual glass of evening wine. The casual way he moved, like this was just another Tuesday, made my jaw clench. The necklace, Marcus. The one from Carlisle's. I kept my voice steady, the way I did during business presentations. Who's wearing it? He paused mid-pour, and for a split second I saw something flicker across his face. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not a nervous chuckle, but a full, rich laugh that bounced off our kitchen tiles. The sound hit me like ice water. Oh, come on, Renee. Don't be so sensitive. He took a long sip of wine, watching me over the rim. You really want to know? Fine. Sarah from Client Relations has been keeping me company. She's young, eager to learn. It's harmless, really. Just a little upgrade to my routine. My fingers pressed against the cool wood of the table. You ever notice how time seems to slow down when your world's falling apart? I could hear every tick of our wall clock, every breath between us. The necklace? I repeated, surprised by how calm I sounded. He shrugged, loosening his tie further. Sarah earned it. She knows how to make a man feel appreciated. His eyes swept over me, and I felt every one of my 45 years under his gaze. Unlike some people who've gotten comfortable. When I didn't cry or scream, his expression hardened. That's the thing about men like Marcus. They expect tears, hysteria. A calm woman throws them off balance. You're just jealous, he continued, voice getting sharper. What? You thought I wouldn't notice younger women anymore? That I'd just settle for watching you age? Please? He knocked back the rest of his wine. If anything, you should be grateful I haven't traded down completely. The words landed like a slap. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a transaction where I'd somehow lost value. I wanted to grab his precious wine glass and send it flying, watch it shatter against our carefully painted walls. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed his exact words. Every single one. What are you doing? He asked, irritation creeping into his voice. Taking notes won't change anything, Renee. This is happening. Sarah's happening. Deal with it. I kept typing, adding timestamps, preserving his casual cruelty in digital ink. Above us, the pipes groaned, our old house's familiar song. Marcus glanced at his watch, already dismissing me. I need a shower, he announced, like this was any other evening. We can finish this discussion later, though honestly there's nothing left to discuss. I listened to his footsteps on the stairs, the bathroom door closing, the shower starting. Each sound marked time like a metronome as I sat there, fingers trembling over my phone screen. The house felt too big suddenly, too empty with just my breathing and the distant sound of running water. Looking at my phone, I scrolled through my contacts. 3 of Marcus's co-workers had become friends over the years. People who shared lunches, birthday celebrations, holiday parties. People who might know things. People who might talk. The shower continued running upstairs, giving me a 20-minute window. My hands shook as I opened my messaging app, but my mind was already sorting through possibilities, identifying weak points in Marcus's carefully crafted office image. A plan was taking shape, something small and precise, like a seed pushing through concrete. I glanced at Mother's notebook, then back at my phone. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't explode like a bomb. It grows quietly, taking root before anyone notices the ground shifting. The shower pipes knocked once, twice, counting down my window of opportunity. After Marcus left for work, I pulled up LinkedIn on my laptop. Ever wonder how much of your life is just sitting there in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots? His profile showed the usual corporate shine: awards, team photos, client testimonials. But it was the activity feed that caught my eye. Sarah Martinez from Client. Relations had been liking every single one of his posts for the past 8 months. My phone buzzed. It was Doris from HR, responding to my casual breakfast invitation. We'd shared enough office party small talk over the years that meeting up wouldn't raise flags. "Corner Cafe, Arvo 9:30, she texted. "They still have those blueberry scones you like." The cafe was quiet when I arrived, just the hiss of the espresso machine and morning regulars hunched over laptops. Doris waved from a corner table, her admin badge still hanging around her neck. "Girl, you look tired," she said, sliding a coffee toward me. "Everything okay?" I managed to smile. "Just work stress." "Actually, I wanted to ask about Marcus's late nights. The parking charges are getting crazy." Doris's expression shifted, that tiny flinch people get when they know something you don't. She pulled out her phone, fingers moving fast. "Look, before I show you this, you should know people are worried about you." She turned her screen toward me. Screenshots from the company's Slack channels. Marcus's messages popped up in neat gray boxes. "Renee's having another episode. She gets emotional when I work late. I'm trying to be patient, but..." My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. You know that moment when you realize the story everyone's been telling isn't the one you're living? "There's more," Doris said quietly. She pulled up the firm's internal org chart. "That client success promotion everyone's been buzzing about? Marcus has been pushing hard for Sarah." I set my cup down carefully. "Sarah Martinez?" "Yeah. He's been singing her praises in every management meeting. Said she's exactly what the department needs." Doris hesitated. "People used to think he was gunning for it himself, but..." The cafe's AC kicked in, sending a chill across my arms. The promotion wasn't meant for him. It was his gift to her. My marriage wasn't just unraveling. It was being rewoven into something else entirely, thread by calculated thread. That evening, I stood at the kitchen sink, mechanically rinsing dishes while my mind raced. Marcus's precious imported shampoo sat on the counter, its fancy label promising maximum volume for distinguished gentlemen. He'd been using it religiously since his temples started thinning. The bottle caught the light, and suddenly I remembered something from my college roommate's cosmetology days. How certain hair products, mixed wrong, could turn simple dye into something lasting. Not dramatic enough to scream sabotage, but noticeable. Public. My hand reached for the bottle. The liquid inside looked innocent enough, expensive enough that he'd never switch brands. I opened Mother's leather notebook, the pages still crisp despite years of use. In the margins, I started sketching times, products, percentages. The plan took shape in quick, practical strokes. I capped the bottle and set it back exactly as I'd found it. My reflection in the window looked different somehow. Sharper, more focused, like finally seeing the path through a maze you've been wandering. "Working late again?" I called up to Marcus as he grabbed his keys the next morning. "Big presentation prep," he answered smoothly. "Don't wait up." I watched him straighten his collar in the hallway mirror, every hair perfectly in place. The same mirror where he'd soon see the first signs of change, where private choices would start showing their true colors. The leather notebook sat open on the counter, yesterday's coffee ring overlapping my fresh notes. I traced the stain with one finger, feeling the texture of the page underneath. Some marks, once they set in, don't wash out so easily. Getting the right hair dye was trickier than I'd expected. You can't just walk into any drugstore and find something subtle enough to pass as accident, yet permanent enough to stick. Trust me, I'd know. I've been touching up my own grays for years. I drove 40 minutes to a beauty supply store where nobody knew me. The kind of place that caters to professionals, with rows of chemicals behind the counter and that sharp salon smell that catches in your throat. A young clerk with rainbow-tipped hair raised her eyebrows when I described what I needed. Semi-permanent that transfers on contact? You sure about that? She tapped her fingers on the glass counter. That's usually what people try to avoid. I gave her my best concerned wife smile. My husband's having a reaction to his regular shampoo. Doctor suggested we try something gentler, but he's particular about his brands. She shrugged and pulled out 3 bottles, laying them next to Marcus's empty shampoo bottle I'd brought for size comparison. The middle one caught my eye. Same height, similar cap design. Perfect. This one's got that slow-release formula you mentioned, she said. Takes a few washes to really show up. She squinted at the bottle. Kind of an ashy tone. I handed over cash, no digital trail, and tucked the bottle into my purse next to Marcus's empty. By the time I pulled into our garage, I had the timing mapped out in my head. Marcus always took his sleeping pill at 10:30, was out cold by 11:15. His snoring had a rhythm to it, like waves hitting the shore. 3 deep ones, then a pause. Have you ever noticed how different your home feels at night? How every creak seems louder, every shadow deeper. I sat at the kitchen table until 11:30, watching the minute hand tick while Marcus's snores drifted down the hallway. The bottles stood side by side on the counter, his premium brand, my chemical solution. The transfer had to be perfect. 1 drop on the counter, 1 fingerprint out of place, and the whole thing would unravel. I'd practiced with water earlier, matching the viscosity, testing how much pressure the cap needed. My hands were steady as I worked, measuring and mixing with the precision Mom taught me in her kitchen years ago. Cooking is chemistry, she used to say. Get the ratios wrong and everything falls apart. At 11:40, I eased our bedroom door open. Marcus lay sprawled across his side, face buried in the pillow. I counted his snores. 1, 2, 3, pause. Right on schedule. The bathroom counter was still wet from his evening routine. I dried it carefully, arranged his products exactly as he'd left them. The bottles made a soft click as I swapped them, the sound barely louder than my heartbeat. Evidence management came next. I'd already photographed his original bottle from every angle, label, cap, batch numbers. The replacement was identical, down to the last serif on the logo. I slipped the empty original into a Ziploc bag, tucked it into my purse for disposal tomorrow. My leather notebook waited on my bedside table. I opened it slowly, mindful of the spine's creak, and wrote, minimum touch, maximum reveal. Below that, I noted the time, temperature, and humidity. Details matter when you're building a case. Setting the alarms was the last step. 5:50 a.m. to make sure Marcus didn't oversleep and skip his shower. 6:05 a.m. in case I got a chance to document the results. I laid out his favorite blue shirt and gray slacks, playing my usual role, the dutiful wife, smoothing his path through the morning. The lamp clicked off at 11:42 p.m. Exactly. Darkness settled over the room like a held breath. I lay still, listening to the apartment's night sounds, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the heating system, Marcus's steady snores. Time stretched like taffy. I counted heartbeats, measured breaths against the clock's soft glow. The wait felt endless, until suddenly it wasn't. 5:50 a.m. My phone lit up silently. A minute later, Marcus stirred, fumbled for his own alarm. The bathroom fan hummed to life, and water began to run. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing even. Just another morning, nothing to see here. The shower's rhythm mixed with Marcus's off-key humming, his usual morning soundtrack, playing out right on cue. I stood at the kitchen counter, measuring coffee grounds with practiced precision, while Marcus's shower soundtrack drifted through the bathroom door. Sweet Caroline this morning. He always picked upbeat songs when he was feeling particularly pleased with himself. The kettle bubbled, almost drowning out his enthusiastic but wildly off-key, bah, bah, bah. You know that feeling when you're waiting for a plan to unfold? When every second feels like it's moving through molasses? I kept my movements deliberately casual, though my pulse was doing double time against my wrist. The water shut off at exactly 7:22, Marcus was nothing if not consistent in his routines. Steam billowed out when he cracked the door. I heard the squeak of his palm wiping the mirror, followed by a pause. Then came the first muttered curse, soft enough that he probably thought I couldn't hear it. The towel made a rough sound against his head, and another curse followed, louder this time. "Everything okay in there, honey?" I called out, keeping my voice light as summer breeze. No answer, just more furious toweling. When he finally emerged, I busied myself with the coffee pot, sneaking glances in the reflection of the microwave door. Oh, it was better than I'd hoped. Subtle streaks of pinkish gray had settled into his hairline, barely noticeable unless you were looking for them. But that white collar of his? That expensive Egyptian cotton was already showing the first signs of staining where his damp hair touched it. "Morning," I said, sliding a fresh towel across the kitchen island. "Coffee's almost ready." His eyes caught the towel, and I watched panic flicker across his face before he could mask it. "Thanks," he managed, one hand unconsciously rising to touch his hair before he caught himself. "New shampoo?" I asked innocently, pouring his coffee into the travel mug he'd bought himself last Christmas. "Your hair looks different this morning." "Just the light," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "Must be the light in here. The bathroom bulb's been flickering." I hummed non-committally and handed him his coffee. While he fussed with his tie in the hallway mirror, I pulled out my phone and sent Cousin Denise our prearranged signal. Marcus was out the door by 7:41, leaving behind a damp towel and that beautiful stained collar in the hamper. I waited until his car pulled away before fishing out my phone again. The collar made a perfect subject. Stark white fabric, unmistakable pinkish-gray blotches right where his neck had rested. Click. Into the notebook it went, dated and time-stamped. The morning crept by like cold honey. I organized receipts, updated spreadsheets, and definitely didn't check my phone every 5 minutes. Finally, around 1:15, my screen lit up with a message from Jenna, the admin who'd been helping me piece things together. "Girl, you should see this place. Everyone noticed the new look by 9:20. He's been in meetings all morning trying to play it cool, but that color's not fooling anyone." I grinned, imagining Marcus sitting through client presentations, pretending nothing was wrong while that subtle tint grew more noticeable by the hour. But my satisfaction lasted exactly 37 seconds, right until Jenna's next message popped up. "Heads up, though. Overheard him and Jessica planning their big announcement for the company gala. Sounds like Saturday's going to be quite a show." My chest tightened like someone had cranked a vice. The gala, of course. The perfect spotlight for Marcus to unveil both his promotion and his upgrade. He'd probably planned it for weeks, timing it just right to maximize the impact. And there I'd be, watching from the sidelines while he dismantled our life in front of everyone who mattered. I stared at Jenna's message until the screen went dark. The dye job suddenly felt small, almost childish. What good was a pink-tinged hairline against the humiliation he had planned? My fingers hovered over the phone, itching to text Denise, but I couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone that your victory lap just turned into a countdown to disaster? I had just started to feel the warm glow of victory when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a group chat with several admins from different departments. "OMG, Marcus is working it. Just walked into the break room like he planned the whole thing." Another message popped up. "Called himself a trendsetter. Said he's bringing Silver Fox energy early." My stomach dropped as photos started flooding in. There was Marcus, coffee in hand, striking an exaggerated pose while people gathered around him. He'd somehow twisted my careful plan into a performance, and from the laughing emoji reactions, his audience was eating it up. I set my phone down and pressed my palms flat against the cool kitchen counter. Should have known better. Marcus had always been able to spin straw into gold. It's what made him so dangerous. While I'd been home imagining his embarrassment, he'd turned a potential humiliation into another chance to charm the crowd. The firm-wide email arrived at 2:47 p.m., its cheerful subject line like a slap. "Annual Summer Gala, this Saturday at 7 p.m. I opened it, scanning past the usual details about parking and +1s until I hit the programming notes. Department heads giving presentations should deliver their USB drives to tech support by 6:30 p.m. for pre-event setup. Standard format, PowerPoint or PDF only. Below that was a chat screenshot someone had forwarded, a conversation between Marcus and the events team. Marcus: looking forward to sharing some exciting updates during my slot events. Great. Time allocation still good for 15 mins? Marcus: perfect. Got a few surprises planned. The whispers started connecting. Marcus's leadership preview, his hints about making things official, the way he'd been cozying up to the board members. 4 days. He was going to use that spotlight to announce everything, the promotion, the relationship, the whole package deal, while I sat there like some cautionary tale about shelf life. My legs carried me in circles around the kitchen island, the same island where we'd had Sunday brunches, where I'd helped him practice presentations, where I'd believed we were building something real. The heat behind my eyes threatened to spill over, but I forced it back. Crying wasn't going to stop Saturday from coming. I walked to the printer and hit the button for a hard copy of the gala invite. The paper was still warm when I grabbed a red pen and drew a thick circle around Saturday 7 p.m. In my leather notebook, I wrote today's date, then underneath, T-4 days. The countdown felt like a living thing ticking away in my chest. I turned to a fresh page and wrote counter-programming at T. The top, the letters sharp and precise. The page stayed blank below it, waiting. 4 days wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Looking at that empty page, I remembered something my mother used to say when time got tight on a deadline. Baby girl, time is like oxygen now. Use it smart, use it well, but whatever you do, don't waste it wishing for more. The doorbell rang at 6:15 p.m. I opened it to find Cousin Denise juggling 2 packed grocery bags, her signature no-nonsense expression already in place. You know those people who just radiate, "I've got this" energy? That's Denise. First things first, she said, shouldering past me into the kitchen. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee? I started to answer, then realized I couldn't remember. She nodded like that told her everything. Sit, she ordered, pulling out ingredients. You're going to eat, and then we're going to plan. Have you ever noticed how some people just know exactly what you need even when you don't? The smell of browning butter and sage filled my kitchen, her famous emergency pasta, she called it. The same dish she'd made when her own ex tried to take her business during their divorce. Now, she said, sliding a bowl in front of me, tell me everything. So I did. The receipt, the confrontation, the office politics, the failed hair dye plan, the gala countdown, it all spilled out between bites. My voice cracked when I got to the part about Marcus's promotion scheme. I just keep thinking if I'd seen it sooner or if I'd... Stop. Denise's hand came down flat on the counter. That's exactly what he wants. You spinning in circles, blaming yourself while he writes the story. You've got until Saturday. Either fold and let them tell it their way, or fight smart and tell it yourself. Something about the way she said it, like there was no third option, no room for maybes, made everything crystallize. I pushed my bowl aside and pulled out my leather notebook. Okay, I said. Help me think this through. For the next 2 hours, we built what Denise called an evidence matrix. I spread everything across the dining table. The boutique receipt, carefully smoothed, the bank statement screenshots, the text message, crops from the admin's Slack channel, and, my hands shook a little here, printed copies of emails where Marcus had bragged about replacing me with younger talent. Good, Denise nodded, watching me organize. Now think like a lawyer. What proves what, and when? We went through each piece methodically. I noted timestamps, GPS tags, metadata from the photos. Used a black marker to redact names of people who weren't directly involved. No need to drag bystanders into this. Denise showed me how to annotate dates in the margins, creating a clean timeline anyone could follow. The USB format is crucial, she said, peering at the gala email. Test everything twice, no technical hiccups. I pulled up Keynote on my laptop, started arranging the evidence into slides. Simple, clear, chronological. Each export test confirmed compatibility with the AV system specs listed in the programming notes. "What about HR?" I asked, the thought hitting me suddenly. "After this goes public?" "Already there." Denise pulled out her phone, where she'd drafted key phrases. "Write these down. Hostile work environment. Pattern of misconduct. Contemporaneous documentation." We practiced the language, made it sound natural. Not angry, not vindictive, just factual, professional, the kind of terms HR departments respect. The clock hit 10:30 p.m. when I finally labeled a manila folder Exhibits AD and sealed it with a clip. Inside, the receipt, bank records, messages, and emails, all annotated and ready. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote, T-3 days. My hands weren't quite steady, but having a plan felt like finding solid ground. Method became momentum. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the foundation of truth I was building. Denise watched me label that folder, and I saw a flash of that same steel she'd shown during her own fight 3 years ago. "Remember," she said, gathering her things, "the best revenge isn't about matching their cruelty. It's about outlasting it. You know what's funny about betrayal? How it sharpens your attention to detail. Things you used to overlook suddenly become crystal clear. Like how Marcus always kept his presentation USBs in the same spot, third slot from the left in that bamboo organizer he was so proud of finding at some artisan market. I'd watched him that Thursday night, rehearsing his gala speech in his home office, the way he smiled at his own reflection in the monitor, practicing those dramatic pauses he loved so much. Once he finally went to bed, I waited another 30 minutes, counting his breaths until they settled into that familiar snore. Have you ever moved so carefully that every footstep feels like crossing a minefield? That was me, easing into his office at 11:45 p.m. The USB stick sat exactly where expected, labeled Gala Final V2 in his precise handwriting. My hands were steady as I copied it to my laptop. Funny how calm you can be when you're past the point of no return. The structure of his deck was exactly what you'd expect. Company growth projections, client testimonials, that carefully worded slide about exciting personnel changes. I kept the same format, same transitions, same fonts. But where he had charts showing rising profits, I placed screenshots of his champagne receipts. Where he'd planned to announce his promotion, I inserted his emails bragging about trading up to younger talent. Each piece of evidence got its own timestamp in the corner. Small text, professional font, nothing flashy, just facts lined up like dominoes. The kind of details that HR departments can't ignore even when they want to. The midnight air felt thick as I tested the autoplay timing. 10 seconds per slide, long enough to read, short enough to keep the momentum. I added one final touch, a closing slide quoting the firm's policy on workplace relationships and ethical conduct. His own signature was there at the bottom from his last review. Something about seeing it all laid out hit me hard. My throat closed up, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. What if this backfired? What if everyone in that ballroom saw me as the bitter, aging wife who couldn't handle being replaced? The cursor hovered over delete as my mind spun out worst-case scenarios. My phone buzzed. Denise, like she could sense me wavering. Facts don't need volume. Just 4 words, but they steadied me. She was right. The truth doesn't need theatrics. It just needs to be seen. I saved the file with his exact file name, checked the aspect ratio 3 times, and ejected the USB. The weight of it in my palm felt both too heavy and not heavy enough for what it contained. The bamboo organizer creaked slightly as I slipped his original USB into my notebook's back pocket and placed mine in the 3rd slot. Everything looked identical. Same label, same position. Even the dust on the shelf was undisturbed. Back in bed, I opened my leather notebook one last time that night. Under the weak glow of my phone's flashlight, I wrote, T-1 day. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay there watching shadows shift across the ceiling as night faded into pre-dawn gray. Each car passing outside sounded like footsteps, like discovery, like consequences racing toward me. But underneath that fear was something else, a steady pulse of certainty. By this time tomorrow, the truth wouldn't just be mine to carry anymore. The weather matched my mood that Saturday evening. A sharp wind that cut through your coat and made you pull everything closer. I'd chosen my armor carefully. A navy sheath dress that had survived a dozen corporate events, pearl studs that caught the light just right, and the same leather clutch I'd carried to my first client meeting. Sometimes the old reliable things are exactly what you need to face what's coming. You ever notice how hotel ballrooms all smell the same? That mix of carpet cleaner and white wine and too many people trying to impress each other? This one was dressed up in the usual winter gala style. White linens, crystal centerpieces, those twinkle lights that are supposed to make everyone look better than they are. I slipped in at 6:48 p.m., early enough to look eager but not desperate. The AV booth was right where the floor plan showed it, back corner, elevated just enough to see, over the crowd. Two guys in black polo shirts were already checking connections and squinting at laptops. Ever try to look natural while your stomach's doing backflips? I managed a slow circuit of the room, nodding at familiar faces while keeping one eye on Marcus. There he was, holding court near the bar, his hand hovering just a bit too low on his colleague's back. The pink tinge in his hair caught the overhead lights. My little reminder that some marks don't wash out so easy. The seating chart near the entrance confirmed what I'd arranged through Denise's contact in events. Table 7, outer seat, clear path to both exits. Just in case things went sideways, you understand. Never hurts to have an escape route. I watched the tech crew for a while, how they'd collect USB drives from each presenter, plug them in, quick test, next in line. Simple system, clean. The kind that relies on everyone playing by the rules. The stage monitor started its countdown at 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes. My fingertips went cold as ice. You know that feeling when you're past the point of changing your mind, but your body hasn't got the message yet? That was me, perched on the edge of my chair, watching numbers tick down in bright red. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers at 7:30 sharp. Please welcome to the stage, a true pillar of our corporate culture, the man who's helped shape our success for the past decade, Marcus Carter. That introduction hit me like a punch to the gut. Funny how words that used to make me proud now tasted like ash. I could feel that old familiar ache rising up, the one that whispered, maybe I should just let it go. Keep the peace. Stay small. Not this time. Marcus practically bounced up those stage steps, all white teeth and practiced charm. His colleague, half his age with twice my anxiety, clapped a little too hard from her front row seat. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the USB drive I'd switched, and handed it to the tech lead with that same confidence he used to serve me lies across our dinner table. My nails dug into the leather of my clutch. Inside was the original drive, safe and sound, in case anyone later claimed this was some kind of technical mistake. But there wouldn't be any mistakes. I'd tested that deck enough times to recite it in my sleep. The projector hummed to life overhead, that mechanical whir that makes everyone look up like they're about to see something special. Well, they were. Just not the kind of special Marcus had in mind. The room went quiet. That peculiar hush you get when everyone's holding their breath at once. I felt the air change, like the moment before a storm breaks. The first slide snapped into focus, crystal clear on that massive screen. Have you ever watched a room full of people realize they've been living in someone else's fairy tale? It's like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each face changing as the truth hits home. That first receipt filled the screen, champagne, roses, and that damn necklace that started it all. The timestamp glowed like a beacon. 8:47 p.m., right when Marcus was supposedly closing the Peterson deal. I heard someone whisper, "Wait, isn't that?" before the next slide clicked over. Bank statements don't lie, neither do text messages or emails, especially not the ones where my husband, correction, soon-to-be ex-husband, bragged about trading up from older talent to someone more aligned with our future vision. Real corporate speak there, Marcus. Real professional. The whispers turned to murmurs, then gasps, then That awful silence when people don't know whether to look at the screen or the floor. I kept my hands folded in my lap, steady as Sunday morning. 20 years of marriage teaches you how to sit still through just about anything. Remember that colleague I mentioned? The young one who'd been standing so proud by Marcus's side all evening? Her name popped up in his emails, each mention highlighted in caution tape yellow. I watched her face drain of color, watched her perfectly manicured fingers lose their grip on her cocktail napkin. It fluttered to the floor like a white flag as she made her exit through the side door. Smart girl, finally. The MC, poor guy, kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. Perhaps we should, but what could he say? The evidence was right there in Marcus's own words, larger than life. Over by the tech booth, the lead engineer was shooting panicked looks at the HR director. She'd already pulled out her phone, probably speed dialing legal. The CFO leaned in close to our CEO's ear, pointing at something specific on the screen. I could read their lips from here. Policy violation and immediate action required. You know what's funny? My hands weren't shaking anymore. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip. Let them all see how steady I could be. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth finding its level, like water always does. The final slide clicked into place, and I heard at least 3 people intake breath sharply. There it was, in black and white, Section 7.4 of the Employee Code of Conduct, regarding conflicts of interest and workplace harassment. Below that, the confidential reporting hotline number I'd never needed to use. The words hung there like a judge's verdict. I stood up, not to make a scene, just to refill my water glass at the dispenser near the wall. No triumphant smirk, no victory lap, just a woman taking care of her basic needs while chaos unfolded around her. Let them see that too. The house lights came up slow, probably on some pre-programmed timer that didn't know it was interrupting a corporate execution. In the brighter room, I could see everything clearly. Marcus frozen at the podium, his pink-tinged hair now the least of his problems. The executive team moving toward the stage like storm clouds gathering, their faces set in those particular expressions that meant someone's corner office would be empty by Monday morning. I took another sip of water, cataloging faces and reactions. The HR director was already scribbling notes. The CEO's assistant had her phone out, probably rescheduling tomorrow's meetings. 2 senior partners were huddled by the dessert table, heads together, gesturing at their phones. Every detail mattered now. You never know what might need to be included in a formal statement later. Through it all, I just kept breathing, in and out, like Mother taught me during those anxiety attacks after Daddy passed. Steady breaths make steady minds, she used to say. Her leather notebook sat in my clutch, filled with every receipt, every screenshot, every piece of evidence that had just blown Marcus's world apart. My anchor in the storm he'd created. The executive team reached the stage steps, their shoes clicking against the hardwood like a countdown. 2 HR associates materialized at Marcus's elbows like funeral home attendants. Professional, gentle, but leaving no room for debate. They guided him off the stage while he kept looking back at the screen, as if the words might suddenly rearrange themselves into the story he'd planned to tell. You ever watch someone's power drain away in real time? It's like seeing a balloon deflate. They get smaller by the second. The CFO, Ellen Matthews, 23 years with the firm, took the microphone. Her voice cut through the murmuring like a steel blade. We'll take a brief pause here. She adjusted her glasses, the ones she wore for serious occasions. Please help yourselves to refreshments. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes felt like an eternity compressed into slow motion. I watched clusters form and dissolve, phones light up faces, heads shake in that particular way that means someone's reputation is being dismantled, syllable by syllable. The younger colleagues who used to laugh at Marcus's jokes now couldn't seem to look at the spot where he'd stood. When Ellen returned to the stage, the room fell quiet so fast you could hear ice settling in. Abandoned glasses. She had that look, the one that said, Corporate policy was about to drop like a guillotine. After careful review of concerning materials, she began, each word measured and precise. The promotion announcement planned for tonight has been withdrawn due to significant process irregularities. Her eyes swept the room, daring anyone to question this diplomatic phrasing. Leadership will reassess all candidates through proper channels. The HR director, Jerome Washington, stepped up next. I'd always liked Jerome. He had this way of delivering hard news with both firmness and humanity. Effective immediately, he said. Marcus Carter is suspended with pay pending a full investigation into potential misconduct. We ask that all employees respect the confidential nature of this process. I kept my expression neutral. But inside I was feeling something between relief and an ache I couldn't quite name. You know that space where love used to live? It doesn't just empty out, it hollows. Marcus stood at the back of the room now, the HR escorts still flanking him. I watched him scan faces, looking for allies, for the sympathy he'd always counted on. But all he found were people staring at their phones, suddenly fascinated by their screens. Funny how quick charm dies when truth pulls back the curtain. My clutch sat heavy in my lap, Mother's notebook inside still holding all those careful records. I picked it up slowly, deliberately. No rush now. The truth was already out there, doing what truth does best, changing everything it touches. Near the exit, Cousin Denise caught my eye and gave me that slight nod we'd practiced. Time to go. Let the firm handle their mess. Let Marcus face the consequences of his choices. My part was done. I stood up, smoothed my dress, the blue one I'd bought myself for my last birthday, and started walking. My heels clicked against the ballroom floor, each step feeling more certain than the last. Passed by that big mirrored column near the coat check, the one that always made people pause to check their reflection. I didn't flinch, didn't even slow down. The woman in that mirror looked exactly like who she was supposed to be. The hotel's revolving door pushed, cool night air against my face. Fall was coming early this year. You could smell it in the breeze. I stood under the striped awning, letting my lungs fill with that clean September chill. My phone buzzed. Marcus's name lit up the screen with a message that was pure him. We need to talk. Just like that. Like he still had the power to summon me, to explain away evidence with smooth words and practiced charm. Like the last hour hadn't happened. Like the last 20 years hadn't happened. I stood there under that awning, holding my phone, feeling the weight of Mother's notebook in my clutch, and finally, I felt light enough to fly. I stared at Marcus's text until the screen dimmed, then let it fade to black. 20 years of marriage, and he still thought he could smooth talk his way through any wall. But this one was built with receipts and timestamps and his own, bragging words. No amount of charm could climb that. My fingers moved through the motions I'd practiced with Cousin Denise, screenshot the message, note the timestamp, save it to the evidence folder. Even now, watching his world crumble, I kept my records clean. You never know when a paper trail might save you twice. Through the hotel's glass doors, I could see the aftermath unfolding. Groups huddled around phones, probably sharing those damning slides. The younger colleague, I still couldn't bring myself to say her name, had disappeared completely. Marcus stood with HR in the corner, his face doing that thing it did when charm failed him. Tight around the eyes, jaw working like he was chewing on excuses. Two kinds of ruin were spreading through that room. First, the professional hit. No promotion, immediate suspension, and an investigation that would dig up every corner of his conduct. Second, and maybe worse for a man like Marcus, the social collapse. Every client who'd trusted his polish, every coworker who'd laughed at his jokes, they were all seeing the receipts, reading his emails, connecting dots that spelled predator in neon. The night air bit at my cheeks as I crossed to the parking lot. My breath came out in little clouds, like I was finally exhaling all those years of holding it in. You know that feeling when you've Been carrying something heavy for so long, you forgot what your shoulders felt like without it? That's what walking to my car felt like. I slid into the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. Instead, I pulled out Mother's leather notebook, the one she'd given me when I first started dating Marcus. "Keep your own records," she'd said. "A woman needs to be her own witness." Lord, if she could see me now. The page where I'd started planning this. Saturday still held my first notes. USB swap, slides ready, timing checked. Simple words that changed everything. I ran my fingers over the indents my pen had made, feeling the weight of what those words had built. Behind the back pocket, I tucked the original USB, Marcus's actual presentation, full of the lies he'd planned to tell. Evidence, just in case HR needed more. Then I wrote the final entry, my hand steady. October 12th, 8:47 p.m. Conclusion: evidence presented, professional consequences initiated, personal truth restored. The notebook's strap made that satisfying snap when I closed it. I set it on my dashboard where the parking lot lights caught the leather's grain. Funny how something so simple, a notebook, a strap, a blank page waiting for truth, could feel like such a powerful symbol. Looking at it there, I saw more than just a record keeper. I saw my future stretching, out, clean, and quiet. No more performing the happy wife while doubt ate at my gut. No more shrinking to make room for his lies. No more working late excuses or phones turned face down. Through the windshield, I could see the hotel's lights reflecting off my notebook's cover. They caught the subtle wear patterns that 20 years of daily use had left on the leather. Each scratch and smoothed corner told its own story. Not just about tonight, but about every small truth I'd saved, every instinct I'd honored, every scrap of dignity I'd protected. I started the engine, letting its hum settle into my bones. The city lights played across my notebook's surface as I pulled out of the parking lot, making the leather seem almost alive. In that moment, I heard Mother's voice again, clear as day. "A liar's crown always crumbles.